We just spent over a half hour doing that, which you can do in 10 minutes. I hope you could do a little better next time. We're going to do notes, and then you're going to fix a class that's broken. Like when you try to run it, it's broken, and there's a bunch of the simple errors that you're going to have to fix. Then we're going to do an FRQ together, and then we're going to do another class modeling a knife that gets sharpened and cuts. And then you have progress check, multiple choice questions that are due Monday. So let's look at the notes. Here's something called scope. We've talked about this before. Any variable is only valid in a certain area of a program. And that area where it's valid is called the scope of that variable. So we talked about this with for loops. This code will not compile. Anyone know why? Joshua.
Is it because the second print is outside the...
Yeah, the second print is outside of the for loop, and that I variable only exists inside the for loop. We talked about this. This line, there's no I variable here because I got created inside this for loop. It only lives right there. So if you try to use just an I without declaring it as a new variable outside of that loop, it will just say, I don't know what you're talking about. So if you have to access a variable after a loop, and also in it, you can declare it ahead of time. See how right here, I said int I equals 0 before the for loop. And then right in here, I just said for I equals 0. So I didn't make a new variable I. Therefore, I'm using the one we already created and everything would work fine. Other important things to know about scope. When you declare a variable in a constructor or in a method, then it's called a local variable. It's only alive inside of that constructor or method. You get out of that and it doesn't exist. So local variables can only be used within the constructor or method that they're created in. And you can't create them as private or public at that level. You just have to say int or double or string. The private and public variable declarations happen at the very top of a class. And parameters in a method or constructor can only be accessed inside of that method or constructor. So when you say public chicken string n, that n variable, you can't use it in other methods or the toString or something because it's gone. It only exists in the moment that constructor is run. And finally, when there's a local variable with the same name as an instance variable, the variable name will refer to the local variable instead of the instance variable. I'm going to show you examples of all these. So points 1 and 2. Right here, I'm declaring a variable t inside of a method. That's a local variable. So I'm just setting up a variable, putting good in it, and then if it's not good, I change it to bad, and then on the return, I just return engine status, either good or bad. So this is all good. There's no error to this. But this variable t is not accessible anywhere else in the class. Like if I had another method that wanted to know if it was good or bad, you can't use that t variable in there. It doesn't exist. Only this variable only exists in the toString. What's wrong with this code? Somebody besides Joshua, given what I just told you. Yeah, Brendan. No, it's okay to have it. This is a constructor for a hamster class. String n sets the name to n. What's wrong is it says private Boolean is hungry equals true. You're not allowed to declare variables private or public inside of methods, only at the very top of a class. So we could say Boolean is hungry equals true, which is a little silly. That declares a local variable, sets it to true, and then the variable gets destroyed as soon as the constructor is done. But it would be legal. But you can't say private in front of there. The code wouldn't even compile. And I just set it down here. Also, is hungry just got created, never got used. And what was the point of that anyway? It would just get thrown away. You couldn't use that variable someplace else. What's wrong with this code? Takes a second to look at it. Nathan?
So for the if statement,
yeah.
It just says is hungry, just like no actual statement. Like
No, it's okay to say if is hungry because it's a Boolean variable.
Okay.
It's okay to do that because it's either true or false. Like, but what's wrong is we declared this variable here in the constructor, but it's gone. It's only local to the constructor. So down here in the toString, when you try to access, okay, I know I got that is hungry variable, but it'll say I don't know who you're talking about. So if you want, yeah, if you wanted to have a variable is hungry that was available to everyone, you'd have to declare it at the very top, private Boolean is hungry. So this bot, it's fine to do what we do up here. I pointed out it's stupid because this variable is not used anywhere and then it's gone. But then down here, you can't use that variable because it doesn't exist. It's local just to the constructor. So parameters declared in a method or constructor header can only be accessed within that method or constructor. Check this out. We have public chicken string n name equals n. That's all good. So then down here, you might be tempted to do this in the toString, but you can't return n because n doesn't exist. N only exists on these three lines: public chicken string n, name equals n, and the curly bracket. These lines right here, and then n's gone. That's an example of a parameter variable, someone trying to use it somewhere else in the class. You can't do that. So I already explained that. And then point 4, yeah. Private int num, and then here's a constructor, public point 4 int n num equals n. That's all good so far. And then down here, public void update int n. So you're trying to send a new number in. Look at this. This declares a new variable. It declares a local variable called num and it sets it to n. And the mistake there is we actually wanted to be setting this class variable, the main attribute variable, to n. This creates a new variable called num that lives only in that little method. We set it to n and then we throw it away. So in another class, if I made this point, one of these objects with a 17 and I update it with 20 and then I printed it, I'm going to get the 17. You might think, oh, the update works. It sends over 20, but it's setting this little variable to 20 just for a second, and then the variable's gone. The main variable never got touched. So the instance variable is available everywhere, but when you define a local variable with the same name as an instance variable, then the local variable is the one that gets referred to in that context. But down here, we're still referring to the instance variable, which never got changed. All right, which brings me to the this keyword. There's a way to work around this. Remember, I've told you it's generally a bad idea to use the same names in a like a constructor or a method header as your class variables, and this one is fine. I'm using first and last, and then in the class, I'm obviously using first name and last name, so there's no confusion. Now, if we wanted to use exactly the same variable names, then you have to use a this here. So you could use the exact same names in your headers, and if you do that, then when you try to use the attribute, the class variable, what's it called? Instance variable, you have to say this. So if I said this dot first name equals first name, the first one's referring to the instance variable, and the second one's referring to the local variable that's part of the header. So this is a lot more complicated than just doing a different name like F or first up here or L and last. But if you really insist on having the variable names be the same, you go ahead and put a this on it. Not a big deal, but it does seem a little more complicated. We can also use this to refer to the current object. For example, I added this method to the frog class that uses this twice. Check it out. I made a method called do it. If we imagine it's in the frog class, it hops the frog 10 spaces by calling this dot hop. And then it also prints the frog. Yes, this is kind of weird. You wouldn't really do this normally, but if you saw it, I didn't want you to be freaked out. Here's another example that'll show up on the multiple choice problems. The do something method uses a this call right here. That just calls the toString and prints it. I wanted you to have seen it so it didn't freak you out. All right, so for the rest of the period, that's a little bit misleading. For 5 minutes, I want us to work on the broken class, and then we're all going to switch and do an FRQ on a piece of paper. And then after the FRQ, you're going to work on, we're going to go over it, and then we're going to work on the knife class and the multiple choice. So let's do the broken class first. What's broken is I made a bunch of simple errors that people often do, and your goal is to try to look it over and figure out what's broken and fix it. Also, the notes are attached to this one. I think I'm gonna leave the video going, and I'll go through the broken class. So if you try running it, it's going to give you a bunch of errors, and then those errors should help you. And by the way, the errors are not up here in the test code. I'll pause this